Okay, we're live. All right. Of course, I got the wrong number up there too. Let me fix this.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Vietnam.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome to another day of quarantine. All right, what's up, guys? John Sintez, Cutternation Baseball. Cass Kreitlow, practice it 10 times like he told me to after last time.
Low, Kreitlow. Sintez. I guess it's a lot easier to do Sintez. I didn't have to practice that. All right.
Anyway, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Mash that like button. It really helps us in the YouTube algorithm get out there so we can keep surviving this thing. I think the media and the way we're connecting in this form is super important. So without further ado, Cass, go ahead.
Just Steve McGuiggan here. And some of you I know watching know who he is. And so he doesn't need an introduction in a way, but I'll let him introduce himself after he goes right up to yesterday it snowed a ton in Minnesota. Devastating. Tell us about how Minnesota's doing right now, Steve.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Minnesota is not doing well. And that's coming from a guy who is Mr. Positive. That's kind of my bit. So it is we're in quarantine like everybody else. We're in shelter in place here until May 4th as of right now, which basically means you're allowed to go get groceries. And other than that, you're not supposed to leave the house. So that's where we're at. And then yesterday it snowed about 8 inches. So we did have 2 days ago, it was 65 degrees and sunny. And yesterday it was 24 degrees and snowing. So that's even wild for Minnesota standards. Usually you're going to see about 25 degrees difference. But when you start getting 40 degrees difference and you're in quarantine, people get a little negative. So I'm happy to talk to some people from a better spot, to be honest with you.
So this will forever be my Minnesota latest snow story. I was in St. Paul. This was like 2013, I think, maybe 14. I was in St. Paul and I had to drive to Edina to Nevers Larkin. And it took me 2.5 hours on May 2nd. May 2nd. We had a snowstorm May 2nd. It was unbelievable.
Well, that's almost as dumb as me. My first car I ever got, my first job I ever had was working at a place called Drive Performance in Illinois. I took a job for $25,000 a year salary, and I was a millionaire in my head. And I went out there and I started coaching. And my number one goal was to buy a Dodge Challenger. And so I bought that off a $25,000 a year salary in Minnesota, and was driving around with rear wheel drive for like 5 years. So
just death. My buddy had a Jeep.
Trying to drive to where I was getting rides home from work. So,
dude, my buddy had a Jeep, a rear wheel Jeep. Like that was like, you got nothing, no chance. You don't even have momentum then.
It would snow and I'd just shut it down. I'd sleep at the facility. Basically, is how I did it.
He's not kidding.
I like how you're Mr. Positive. That is a massively negative situation, and you're full smiles right now. You're like, yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I think most of life is just being able to tell stories. I mean, that's what I tell everybody is that if you're not creating stories, you're kind of wasting your time. So that's another good story that I like telling, of just how stupid I was buying a car that. But you know what? I'm glad I did it, because people told me I couldn't buy the car that I wanted off a $25,000 a year salary, and I found a way to do it. So, it's still worth it.
So it's the experience now. Now that will live with you forever.
Okay.
That's right.
The stories are going to be easy in this one. So I always like introducing people, because I don't, a lot of times people don't know these things that I'm saying. So when I'm saying these things to everybody else, introducing Steve, he also hasn't heard me say this. So it may be in a way I have shared this, but so in Minnesota, I was working at a competitor with Steve. And so I was at Nevers Larkin Baseball, but I knew Kent Hulls. This was a kid that I played with, and he's been with the program since day one, the Grum, since day one. By the way, side note, the radio is so bad here. I miss the fans so bad. It's unreal. So anyway, the Grum, Kent Hulls, and so this was just something that I'm glad it worked. Like you said, I'm glad things work out the way that they do, because I was able to watch you guys from afar, and so I basically went all in on becoming the best coach that I possibly could be at the same time that MASH started. So 2012 was kind of my like, I'm not going to try to be in finance. I'm not going to try to do anything else. I'm going to go all in. And yeah, so I have no idea if I would have been able to get the skill set that I did without doing what I had to do. And so now we're here though. And the thing that always impressed me was oh man, this is tough to say. But I'm being honest, man. I would send my kid to you guys 10 times. Like I told people that, like, and you guys are just fantastic I know we can't be perfect in what we do. Right. And so there are some things that fundamentally you have to start from. I'm going to give an example of I'm totally making this longer than I thought it was going to be, but who cares? So, my CrossFit gym, okay. Unbelievable culture. They have childcare. Most people don't have childcare. Okay. So they get a ton of young families into the gym, and it's not about having the perfect technique. It's not about like everybody crushing it. Now there are some very, very competitive people there. But again, like that's not what it's about. And because it's about the culture and it's because it's about the people, now everybody can talk and be like, oh yeah, remember when you did that really stupid thing in the workout the other day that I didn't catch? Holy cow, let's as a team, like, let's try not to hurt each other right now. And so those kind of things, because how can you get like the best CrossFit coaches all under the same roof, like starting out? Just like, how can you get the most technically savvy people in a brand new business, right? Like these things just can't exist. So what you can do is you can create a culture of people that care for one another and build everything on that, because it will always be better when everybody's ready to get the next cool thing. We'll all be in on that and we're all invested in that. When we want to decide to, as a program, like go a different way, you can. So anyway, now you have, it's just unbelievable. It's so obvious that that's the way to do it. And it's so anyway, that's kind of what I've seen. Their social media game is fantastic. Their podcast stuff that they do is great. I mean, Harvey's stuff is, they have created an unbelievable team around them, and they know it, we know it, everybody knows it. And that's why it's cool to have you on, Steve.
Oh man, I really appreciate it. Yeah, that means a lot, because that's honestly the whole point, right? That's why we're doing this. So when I'm sure like most guys, we started getting into baseball, it was like, okay, well, I don't know what else to do with my life. And I was at that point. And when we first started, I remember going to like Sunday doubleheaders at like these crappy fields on side fields. And I was coaching a 14U team. And I just got done playing, high level Division I baseball, 2 weeks of pro baseball. When I tell everyone that story, I went 0 for 14 in pro baseball and drove home. So it was like, I got back home and went, I don't want to get a real job. I don't know what to do. And when I was doing these side doubleheaders, I was so invested in winning and losing. And I was so invested, and I was still in the mindset of being a professional baseball player, that I really always see those kids that I first started coaching and apologize to them. And over time, realizing that they got screwed because all I knew was to try to compete in everything that I did and win. And I was missing out on so many opportunities to teach young guys life lessons, so that when they got to the point that I got to, which everybody does, right? When somebody says you're done playing, that they were better able to handle that. I'm a huge believer that talent wins, and you can keep people on the right track within their talent. That's going to get them as far as they can go, more so than anything I'm going to tell them to do with their swing. So the fact that that is what people think of us outwardly is awesome, and means a lot to not just me, but everyone within MASH, because that's what we talk about all the time.
Yeah, man. John, what are you thinking?
I wanted to ask about your program. So for the our listeners and followers that don't know who you guys are, I'm super jealous of the situation that I'm looking at from the Instagrams. And could you explain your program top to bottom for us? And just,
so this is your second facility. Yeah. So maybe talk about like the growth and where you started, how you envisioned it, and how it's grown.
Yeah, maybe tell us about the facility and the size of it and the function.
Yeah.
from there?
Yeah. So when we first started MASH, me and Tom Buski. Tom had already started up, and he was with. Sorry, I know I'm a lot talker, but he had started just gaining a lot of interest within the community. And when I came back, he said, let's start a baseball club. And we started with 24 12-year-olds. We created a program called the Mashup, which was basically, okay, what do young kids need? We did an hour practice with 12 players, and then 12 more players would show up. We'd play a controlled scrimmage with those two teams, and then the original 12 would leave, and the next 12 would practice. And so everyone was getting an hour of practice and an hour of game setting per day. So we started with 24 12-year-olds, and slowly that just started gaining word of mouth, where now we have about 50 teams throughout the course of the year. Minnesota's a little different. You have spring teams, which are basically 14U and down, summer teams, which are 15U and up, and then fall teams, which are everybody. So the calendar year works a lot different up here, which I really like because it promotes kids to train year round, but also play multiple sports. So our team started growing and growing within a baseball club, and slowly, like what you were talking about earlier, Cass, is that we just found that we were more role models for kids than anything. And so that is where performance started being a huge part of our piece. So we have an 8,500 square foot gym with 3 full-time strength coaches. I think they're the most, and I say this with all due respect to all of our families, because I tell them this all the time, they are the most overqualified strength coaches to be working with youth age kids, but they love it. They absolutely love it. And they dive all into it. They don't only work with them. They work with NHL guys, MLB guys, NFL players, professional rock climbers. These guys are awesome. So they enhance our culture a ton. And then the Mindstrong Project was also born within MASH. So what the Mindstrong Project is basically a human performance platform where Harvey was our original pitching coach and just started seeking out, how do we live longer? How are we happier? How can we maximize human performance? So we started the Mindstrong Project, and that's been awesome for our kids. It focuses a ton on breath work and making sure that they can actually apply that not only into baseball, but into their lives. And everything just grew. I mean, it's
Z Health. Z Health.
Z Health.
Z Health. Don't forget it. We'll come back to it. Yep.
Okay.
But you need to tell Harvey Z Health. Okay.
Awesome.
Keep going.
I love it. And that's given us a ton of opportunities. I mean, we've talked to some of the smartest people in the world. I mean, John Gordon is a best-selling author. He's one of my personal heroes.
Rachel Bolshevik, or however you say her name.
Yep. First ever woman coaching.
How do you say her last name?
I want to say Balkovic.
Balkovic. I wasn't that close. Yeah, good. Okay, I wasn't that. Okay.
Yep. And so we just got to the point where basically we're full. We're sold out every year within probably 2 or 3 days of us opening up our memberships. We have 13 full-time coaches that work inside of MASH, and that led us to an opportunity in St. Cloud, which we purchased another just under 20,000 square foot building, and are implementing all the stuff that we've done in Egan in St. Cloud. So it's been a really fun run, and obviously this has hurt the baseball community immensely, the COVID-19. So it's just nice to talk to people, and hopefully anyone that's listening to this can pick up a couple nuggets and hopefully help themselves grow through this process.
Yeah, man. The for what I see on Instagram, I really enjoy the setup and the size of what you guys have going. I think that you guys nail it as far as like baseball facilities goes, with the height, the width of the cages, the length. It's a little bit different in Minnesota, as in San Diego. He and I have talked about this. Something like a Minnesota MASH could actually exist here in Minnesota if,
in San Diego.
Yeah, I'm sorry, in San Diego. If the right people came along with it. Real estate is expensive, but it's also not that expensive. There's plenty of space to find things. But it's just, as you probably know, when you get a machine that big, you got to get the right people in place that can handle that kind of responsibility,
Well,
Yeah,
this is
people are everything, right? So like whoever we hire, we're very upfront, and we've only had one coach that has ever started working for us that actually started working on a full-time salary. And that was our third strength coach, Mike Brash, that we brought on because it was the perfect time for us. He was just coming out of working in pro ball with the Rockies, and it was just the right fit. And he's been an incredible addition, but everyone else has work their way into what we have. And I think that baseball facilities have to look at themselves as more of a college football program. That's what I tell everybody. If you run everything like a college football program does, you guys are going to be in really good shape. And that's how we started. And all our practices run like that. They're very fast paced. We push guys into organizational, like, okay, catchers here, outfield here, middle here, corners here. You basically break it out like football, which I played in high school, and I kind of kept with that. I think baseball gets so boring that you need to match that, and you need to hire people that are willing to teach in what we call the MASH way, and then let them be individuals within that teaching. So I think that the business model that we have for kids and for coaches is nails. It's been 8 years of just perfecting it over time. So implementing this into St. Cloud was scary. It was the first time we'd ever gone outside of our walls, where every day I can walk in and go, hey, this isn't what we're doing. This is how we're going to do this, whatever it is. This was the first time, and watching us add really quality coaches and having them say, okay, I'm going to buy into the way that this works, but I'm still going to be myself within that overarching philosophy, has been really fun, because it's an overall team with individual coaches inside of it.
I mean, I wish I had a nicer way to say this, but it's just like, nobody cares. There aren't a lot of people that like go that far into it. You know what I mean? Like, because you really have to, in our industry, and John and I have talked a lot about this, you absolutely have to think about everybody's perspective, right? And so as we are hiring people and as we're thinking about adding to our team, it's like, they have to really understand where we're coming from, because the sacrifice is kind of tremendous on the front end. And this is with find a place in the world where it's not in our industry, right? Like, to get in and stay in is so much work on the front end, right? And so you have to recognize that, and the people have to be into that and have a plan to go through that time, because it's literally just time.
And nobody's upfront about it. And that's one of the biggest.
I know.
Is they're not willing to sit down with the coach and say, okay, here's the deal. You know, you're going to make $17,000 this year, and I can't promise you anything on the back end, because you have to do this day in and day out. We call our cages just the truth tunnels, right? So like, the truth is going to come out back there. If you're not on your game and you got 13 guys who are in there, this is their profession. This is what we always tell our parents. This is our coach's profession. We're not just here giving lessons. This is our life's work. So when you're back there, if I'm not on and I got a guy next to me and his financial well-being and his reputation as a professional is on the line based on how I'm acting, you guarantee that he's going to hold me accountable. So this circle of trust within what we're doing, and understanding that our product is everyone's mindset every single day. It's a true thing. And I get super passionate about this, because I wish more people would understand that if they could just change their mindset and think differently and check in every day of what they can become, now all of a sudden other people want to be a part of that, and they're going to give their very best too. So it's not only with our coaches, but our process of weeding out, and I say this respectfully, weeding out players who aren't a good fit for us, or weeding out families that aren't a good fit for us, is really easy. And we've done it time and time again. And it doesn't make them wrong or us right. It's just, this is how we do things. And if it doesn't match, we just ask people to go other places. And I think us willing to do that has been a shock to not only the people who we've had those conversations with, but more so the families who love what we do, right? They've been so responsive to that and going, okay, these guys actually stand for this. They're willing to turn away money, because that's the reality of it, right?
Yes.
They're turning away money to create this atmosphere within their facility.
That exact thing. Jim Egan, their next level program. Like, I run with that all of the time. I'm like, unfortunately, they weren't able to make it. Their differences were whatever. But like, the point is you saw that, right? You saw the talent that they had. And it was like, I don't care if you don't want to be here every single time, don't sign up for the program. What are you doing? Like, be here. And the amount of buy-in that they had was really remarkable. So there, and obviously it looked a little different than what you guys are doing, and it looks different than what we would do, but that's not the point, right? So
yeah, that's not. And Jim's been a mentor of mine, honestly. When we first started, now his son plays in our club, and that's a guy, for anyone who's listening to this. He played for the Gophers, and he's coached pretty much his whole life. He is an absolute no nonsense person. And when we started, I was 23. So I was in there 23 years old trying to tell people I knew what I was doing. And he really just sat there and said, this is how you need to be. You need to have conviction with what you want to do and who you want to become. And that meant so much to me as a 23-year-old kid that he owed absolutely nothing to. And it stuck with me from that beginning point. And it's really set the tone for how we act every day.
Tell you what, I'll give you my best Jim Egan story. I mean, I have a lot of Jim Egan stories, but I saved a voicemail from him for a long time. So he sent me a, goddamn, I'm real emotional right now.
Good.
So he sent me a voicemail my senior year fall, and he goes, "Hey, just wanted to leave you on a voicemail. Didn't catch you, whatever." But he goes, I'm more proud of you than anybody that I've ever coached in 12 years. And it was basically because I was a disaster coming in, and I cleaned up my shit and figured it out. And he said it in his own way, but I held on to it forever because, yeah, man, it's funny. And I haven't talked to him in a long time. I actually reached out to him last week, and we talked for like 10 minutes, but he's dude, Eags is a lot too, right? And it's like, oh man, maybe I couldn't handle how right he was all the time.
Yeah, and he'll be upfront with you, but at the same time, like you said, I mean, I think as players, and for anyone who's going to listen to this that's a coach, I think we tend to forget what it was like to be a player, right? And we become such a coach that we forget how to communicate with our players and what matters to them and what means the most to them. And he still treats me like I never played for the guy. I never played for him once. And he was one of the only people that has specifically called me during this time to ask if we're okay. How are you guys doing? Because we're shut down, right? Our business is, by law, you cannot be open. So I just think as coaches, we got to remember what people remember. And it's a lot of people roll their eyes when I say that to them, and they think it's cheesy, and they think that it is a blanket statement. But there is a reason that we have thousands of people that are a part of our club, and why there's 13 adults that are so bought in on our mission. And it's because of that belief. And so every single thing that we do decision-wise is going to match that top structure.
It's impressive.
Dude, it's so good, man. It's so good.
Thank you.
It's, you know what, I'll say one more thing, and then we can kind of transition to something else. So I had this realization at the 2018 coaches convention as I'm listening to Augie Garrido talk. By the way, were you at that one?
I was.
And welcome to thanks for having me at the ACBA. Like, oh shit, Augie. Oh man. Anyway, so obviously and by the way, Ken Ravizza was there too. But so between Garrido and Ravizza, I'm sitting back as a 28-year-old coach and going like, God, all of these old dudes keep on saying it's only about the kids. It's all about the kids. This isn't about the game. It's about your goddamn lives. Don't you see?
Best friend ever.
And but it's like I knew I wasn't connecting on the level that I could, But also you said it earlier. You feel bad for the kids, dude. Oh man. If you're doing your job, you're gonna do it your whole entire career, right? Look back and go, oh my God, you had me then. I coached you what? Right. And I hope people hearing this like recognize that. Like that's not everybody says it like that. Randy Sullivan at the convention said, or one of his kids had said, if you haven't screwed up enough 18-year-olds to know what you're talking about yet. Do you know what I mean? Until you've screwed up enough 18-year-olds or whatever it is. And it's like, God damn. So anyway.
And unfortunately, the baseball community is overall perceived. Now, I don't believe this to be true, but it's perceived to be negative, right? And like inside of MASH, we talk about 10-80-10 all the time. So like 80% of people are the herd, 10% is positive, 10% is negative. The loudest voices always win. So the culture is going to shift towards that 10%. So in the baseball world, the 10% that's the loudest on paper is the negative. So people think that they can't go out and they can't say, this is who I am. This is what we're about. This is what I actually care about. Here's a kid who is a single A player that has turned into a double A player. Look at his swing. Because you're going to get the 10 losers that go on there and absolutely roast you for what your kid's swing looks like. And I hope that anyone who's on here understands, of course they don't have a perfect swing. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Of course that I could go into your guys' facility and not know anything about pitching, which I don't. I don't know anything about pitching. I tell all my families I don't know anything. And go, hey, what do you think about this kid? He's missing this way. What if he did this, 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 and this? It's like, thanks a lot, Steve. Do you know this kid's background story? Do you know how long he's been here? Do you know what he looked like in his first session? It's the dumbest thing ever. So I hope that at some point the positive 10% can overtake the negative 10% who just prey on parents who are able to see these people say, if you don't swing like this, you're not going to be successful. And it's the worst thing that's happened in sports. And it's the number one thing that I'm trying to go against right now. And I get really fired up about it because it confuses young players and it confuses parents. And it's not fair. I don't have a follow-up part to that, but I hope everyone hears that. And I hope they understand that if the people who are positive in this industry are louder, that will win. It's just a fact of life.
I have a great add-on to this right here. I think another thing that people miss going further into that is to realize that the video of the kid or even the professional athlete, that like idea, the activity that they're doing is an evolutionary idea that never is perfect. And striving for that perfect thing, right, is always going to be a thing. And the misconception that pitching or baseball is robotic, that it is that easy, is so far off,
like get off your perfect swing kind of thing. It's like, what if you don't get off a perfect swing right now and you win the game? Are you cool with that? Do you want to play that game?
Yeah.
And it's like, I tell people all the time, I go, people are not playing the same game John Sintez is, and it's like, well, really what I'm saying is people don't realize how professionals think about the game. And some professionals don't get there. And that's why they don't become the best of the best, right? But it's actually pretty easy. But it's not at the same time, right? It's this balance of, and anyway, like there's so much to be worried about. And it's not where your back elbow starts, right? It's like, what does that person look like right now? Who is this pitcher in front of me? Like, what kind of human are they? And I will beat them way more if I know those kind of things, right? And so I see you grinning because it's so easy to know these things. It's really weird that people don't accentuate this part of the game, right? It's weird that the pendulum has swung so far that minor league baseball players are getting handed reports of their data and like that's their coaching. And it's like, well, I can't actually say what I want to say right now because I don't know how you need to be taught. And I don't know. It's just such a weird time in the game right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I say it all the time. Well, first off, guys, if anybody knew exactly how to coach pitching or exactly how to coach hitting, there'd be two things that would happen. Every single person on planet Earth would pay that person to instruct them on how to do that thing. And secondly, every other coach would do that same exact thing. So to think that anyone has the actual answers is so ridiculous. All you can do is just continue to be in there and go, okay, what's this? What's this? How did this work? What is my experience with this on this kid? Oh, this worked 3 years ago with this guy because of this cue. Let's do this. And you try to move guys up the ladder. But if anyone had the actual answer, we'd all be done here. And that's something we talk about a lot within our facility is if we're not doing something right now today that we disagreed with a year or two ago, we probably are lazy, right? So in baseball, you have two distinct areas that people say they're either your analytics and your new school or your old school. And for whatever reason, people don't think that you can live in the middle. Like for us, we talk about, okay, we're going to be old school morals, old school mentality. This is how you play the game. This is how you look. This is how you hustle. But if we're not also looking into how does Rapsodo work? How does video work? how do we make these kids better, then that's just being lazy, right? You can't use old school. We're old school as a blanket statement for not being willing to change with the times and give your athletes the best possible training that they can get. Because otherwise, yes, then you are stealing from your clients.
But you also did it the right way too. And I'm going to say there's a right way because you didn't go technology first. Like that was something that I was commenting to John about. Is like, I know that you guys could have been affording technology way sooner than you did, but it's because it's like, it's not that important yet. Like, prove it to me that that's important. Right. And it's like, cause I know that changing the way that people think about themselves and how they compete is going to, it's just so, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I'm like, I process out loud. So I'm kind of saying this stuff because I'm like, oh shit, I get it even more now. I understand even more where you guys have been coming from. So anyway, it's just so cool.
Right. And for anyone I'm a hitting guy. So like with Rapsodo, like this is the first year that I've used Rapsodo. And a lot of it was just learning. I spent most of the time learning. And after we put the Rapsodo out for the first time, I started paying attention to the smallest possible details within every single one of my hitters. So in our cages are big. Our cages are about 80 feet long, some of them that we hit in. So I get in there and I'm watching these guys hit, and they barrel a ball and they hit it hard, but it's got total topspin on it. And I'll just start asking the kids without the Rapsodo out, how did you hit that ball? Oh, I hit it really well. They don't even understand, younger players don't even understand the concept of barreling up a ball. We don't need to have this other stuff out there until they have building blocks of understanding to where that becomes an actual tool. And there will be a time for that, but just throwing out a Rapsodo and saying, we got a Rapsodo report for your kid, that again, that falls in the lazy category to me. I would assume, and I don't know, you guys can tell me because I love watching your guys' stuff. I mean, we use stuff from you guys all the time because I love what you guys do. So do you think that a lot of people just throw that out there and just leave it out front and don't even actually know what they're looking at with Rapsodo reports?
Well, I think I agree. There's a miss. Yeah, you brought up a couple things in that thing of what you said right there. There's, as every pitcher would say, 4-hole high school, drop bombs. I can still swing it. Matter of fact, recently within the past 3 months, hit a double off the wall in a game. So just want to throw that out there.
Let's go.
No, but to me, like I had some pretty decent hitting coaches, high school coaches, a AA guy with the second base, with the Pittsburgh Pirates, second baseman. And like just the concept of backspin, like you were telling me, I got obsessed with spin, and I've always been obsessed with spin. And like watching guys hit tennis, guys hit tennis balls in matches and noticing like the top spin, the backspin, and the stuff like that. And do you think this is a correlation that I think, and I want your opinion on it? Do you think that this small cage stuff is disguising all of these top spin, backspin stuff because you can't actually see the shape because it doesn't have enough distance?
Yeah, and that's something that we actually did. That's a great question. So something we did when we first brought it out and started playing around with it was we actually marked areas within the cage that you could say, okay, like, and a crazy drill to do to kids too, to take it back even a further step, is putting baseball bats or any piece of something that you can lay on the ground and showing guys the angle of what's actually a fair ball. It is wild. It blows people's minds. You can hit a ball that you feel like would be in the third base dugout. That's a fair ball. And every hitter that's ever done a competitive cage in college knows what I'm talking about. You've never been able to get a hit in a batting cage unless you hit the very back screen as hard as you possibly can. That's the only way that people think there's a hit. Yeah. So
hey, Steve, I'll take that. Can I take that back right there?
Yeah.
As a pitcher, I really appreciate all the hitters trying to go up the middle all the time.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like, thanks, man. Really appreciate you trying to stay on that cutter away and hitting it to the second baseman. Good job.
When we did that, it even honestly, as a coach, it blew my mind, because if anyone as a coach is thinking they can just see a ball hit and go, oh, I know exactly where that went, they're lying too. So putting up those lines helped me a ton. I was like, dude, that's a fair ball. And not only is it fair, it's probably to shortstop, right? So I think that if you can start understanding the angles within the cage, it changes so much. And we try to do it where we go, okay, we actually cut our cages in half. So we'll go cut our cage so that guys can hit on the front end. It'll probably be about 3/4 back so they can see the ball go a little further. But then we have our field station. So like we do small group training. So if you're in a small group, you're going to come up with the coach. You're going to hit with them. You're going to figure out what you're working on. And then we have a field station in the back that people have to go work on their own within their class time. So you're not always having a coach on you, because ultimately you're going to have to feel and understand, am I backspinning it? Am I getting my hip through? Am I casting? Whatever it is, they all have individual time within our training to go do that. And we tell people why they're doing it. I think the best thing that I ever told a parent was, if you are in a class with me, and this is back when parents were able to come back and watch lessons for us, and I'm talking the whole time, I'm doing that for you. I'm not doing that for your kid. And when I realized that I was over coaching kids because I wanted to make sure they felt like they were having value, that was one of my best coaching realizations, to be better and just to give kids the opportunity to feel and do things on their own so they can actually be successful inside of a game setting.
Yeah. It's just why we do, like, people ask how long are our sessions. I don't know, how long ever it takes. Like maybe 50 minutes, maybe 90. Like
starts at 1:30.
Yeah, when's dinner? Like, what do you want?
That's awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
I mean,
and do you have guys who come in? So if you have a 1:30 and then a 2, will they just overlay if that guy's still working?
yeah. So we have double throwing lanes, and then so on the same point of what you were saying before, we have many of times where we'll say throw 8 in a row and let us know which is the best one, right?
We have a max. We have a max of 6 an hour is how
Yeah.
we do it. It's capped at 6 an hour. So there is some overlay, and like we don't want it higher than 8. But it basically sometimes every now and then it'll be 8, but that's the highest. I don't want it higher than 8.
The alternating throwing lanes seem to help with not only be able to use one radar gun, but keep the flow, right? Because when one kid throws on one lane, the other kid should be setting up and getting ready. And then while that guy's throwing, the other guy's setting up. So you can kind of rotate your stations, and then it ends up getting kind of fun too, where you got one guy on a short mound, one guy on the flat ground, and then you got another guy on the long mound and another guy on the flat ground. So it rotates through, and then it also creates a cool environment where we have 8-year-olds watching 20-year-old college guys that are going, and then all we're doing is just slipping little nuggets to the college guys, going like, hey, say something to the kid. Like, if you see him do something, say something.
Yeah, and I haven't like ranted on this, so let me go on this, because I used to say this all the time to parents, and just like, I know when the 8-year-old comes in the door and the mom sees him throwing next to a guy that weighs 230 pounds, she's real nervous. And so am I, right? Because I need to make sure that your kid is mature enough to not get hit by a baseball going really fast. As long as we get past that point, that's literally the qualification. Right. And so I really don't care what your maturity level is, because immediately that 18-year-old, they have to be on. They have to be paying attention. We have 18-year-olds that almost get hit by a baseball by 10-year-olds because they're not paying attention. And these are problems that need to just work themselves out. Right. And so they need to have the freedom to be able to do this. Like, it's crazy how many times we have kids coming into our facility of all ages that are unbelievably anxious to be in a new place. They don't know how to, like, they can't handle mom and dad watching. They can't handle me watching, right? And these are things that need to take time and patience and like that whole like feel thing. Anyway, the whole point of the different age groups is the problems are the same, people. It's all the same stuff. And to have that older brother, younger brother dynamic there is brilliant to me.
Well, yeah, and your kids are extremely lucky if that's the way that you do it. Like, when we first started doing that here, that was like unheard of, that you would have an 18-year-old hitting with an 11-year-old. And the process of explaining to them and sticking to our guns, and now this is 8 years now, right? So I've been doing this for 8 years. So I have some kids who are now to that point where they're the 18-year-old. And I'm going, hey, I know that you don't want to hit with this 11-year-old, but guess what, bud? And people don't think this way. That guy who hit with you when you were younger, he didn't want to hit with you either. So your job is to make sure that he gets better. Okay. You're not like better than everybody else. And I think that having that thought process of, nobody who walks in the door is better than anybody else is so powerful, especially for the best players. It's more powerful for them than for the bad players because it forces them to grow up and understand that their responsibility to the game is bigger than the fact that they're an all-state pitcher.
Dude, you're wonderful, man.
I love it. The I'm trying to think about, it was God, what's his name? It was on Watch Momentum. I'm not sure if you watch his stuff, but one of the guys for the Diamondbacks was talking about how he makes a point to, like, every chance he gets, he finds kids and gives them baseballs and signs autographs and plays catch, because he knows, like, that's how he fell in love with the game. He went to, I want to say he went to like a Rangers game with his dad, and the bullpen catcher was playing catch with him at like 7. And he, you know, look at him now, right? And so, you know, speaking of positivity and changing up the mindset of what's going on with the world, you know, baseball could be one of the safest sports to practice by yourself, because it's kind of like it's really hard. You know, I'm speaking from experience. I couldn't throw for 3 years with 2 surgeries. So, you know, it's just something that you have to learn how to do as a professional. And the sooner you can understand that this is going to be your solo grind, as everybody likes to call it, you know, show up for the grind. Like, you don't know what a grind is. Like,
no,
you know,
no,
you guys
stop
are
telling us you're grinding. I don't like the word. I don't know if you guys do. I don't like the word grind. I'm not a fan of it. I think it puts a negative connotation on working hard. And I think that we should enjoy that process, especially in baseball. Like you were saying, we will, and we talk about this all the time. You will practice more than you play this game. You will practice far and away more than you'll play between training, defensive programs, practicing, whatever it is, weightlifting. If you're not enjoying that process and you see it as a grind, you're in trouble, right? Especially if you're in high school and you see it as a grind. We need to recalibrate what you're thinking and what you're doing when you show up to these sessions. And from a very surface level standpoint, the only thing that's come out of this thing from a specifically hitting coach standpoint is players are looking at T-work a lot differently than they were looking at it a month ago. We used to have kids come in and T-work's kind of your own time. If you're given 7 hours of lessons, anyone who does lessons knows this, you got about 3 minutes in between each class where T-work or warm-ups or arm care starts that you take a pee and you just take a breath, right? And you come back in. They would.
Yeah, we don't have that. We don't have that.
Don't.
It's just rolling.
I've been there though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 3 minutes. Go pee. Take a breath. Close the door so no one can bug you. That's your alone time. And then you come back out, and the next group's done with T-work. I think that coaches need to utilize this time to show all of their players, professional and down, the benefits of doing all of these little things and setting up these building blocks so that when you face a 100-mile-an-hour machine, you're actually successful. So that's been fun to see for sure from my end.
So Doug Latta is one of my mentors and somebody that I talk about a lot. And so I love how he talks about hitting, but he talks about the grind, but he thinks about it a little bit differently. If you think moving your body should feel like a grind, you're completely missing the point, right? And so that part, you know, we're coming at it from 2 different standpoints. So from a movement standpoint, I keep on thinking like the pendulum has swung so far, right? So we went from, it was like bad for baseball players to lift weights to like now like everybody lifts weights like crazy. And it's like, that's great, but are you grinding every single movement? Or are you learning to move better? Are you trying to make your life easier? So, oh my goodness. Okay.
Hold on 1 second. You had a time frame. I just want to make sure.
That's what I was just going to say. Time. So I was going to say, hey, we need to do this again. We might even do a double podcast because you're amazing. I want to get Harvey on. We can
get 6 people at once on this, 6 different devices, so we can get everybody in.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. I think I appreciate it. I appreciate it a lot. And I try to get onto these as much as I can because I learn so much, you know, even just little snippets here and there of, we call them just golden nuggets, right? Just picking up golden nuggets daily. And we have so much time throughout the day. And the reason that I love the people I'm around is because they are pushing their field. And to go from starting as a baseball club at the most surface level baseball club ever to having a place that I honestly think, and this is to everyone that I'm around, I think what we do at MASH in the state of Minnesota is one of the most special things across the entire country. And I do believe that with all my heart. I think that if more and more people could come into our facility and be around it and see what these guys are, I'm lucky enough to work with true professionals. And so the more we can talk to people across the country that are doing things the right way, the better we're going to be. So I get excited for podcasts because every time we hire somebody new, they inject something brand new that I wouldn't have thought of, or they call us out on something that's like, well, yeah, you guys think you're good, but you're not very good at this. So
Yeah.
the more I can talk to you guys and get that opportunity and talk to more baseball people, I'd love to do it.
You got to tell us about your product next time, that app. We didn't get to that. You got to tell your strength coaches to watch the podcast tomorrow, or at least make sure they know about it. It's Raj. Oh my gosh. It's Shadari. And I've been trying really hard on that one. And that's not even right. It's Chaudhry. That's what it is. It's Raj Chaudhry. Anyway, Synapse, unbelievable tool. We're going to have him on tomorrow. It should be just 10 o'clock our time, noon your time. I'm telling you, Steve, it's huge. So
let's go.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah.
All right.
It is.
So I'm so glad you got to get going. You got somebody right now. And dude, you're the best.
Tell everybody where they can follow you real quick, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, if you just go on at Minnesota MASH, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and recently TikTok. I told our social media coordinator I don't want anything to do with TikTok. You can do whatever you want there. And you can follow us at MASH Performance. So there's 3 businesses within our one business. It's Minnesota MASH, MASH Performance, and the Mindstrong Project. So you have basically your baseball, your strength conditioning, and your mental and breath work all in one. So they're great follows for anyone who wants to be engaging.
That's awesome, man. It was really nice to meet you. Thanks for taking a little time out of your day and coming over and jumping on the podcast. If you need anything from us, reach out and we'll set this up again. And this is too easy for us, so we got to get the whole crew on there, and we can make sure we got enough time.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you guys for having me. Keep doing things the right way. You're a
Appreciate
great follow. So
you guys too.
Stuff from you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it. Yeah, definitely.
See you, fellas.
See you guys.